We continue to celebrate the 4th of July, of course, so to all of my fellow Americans, or if someone else is visiting this fine morning, a happy 4th of July. I don't think we can remember our fallen heroes and veterans sufficiently. In one of the rooms you have so luxuriously provided for me in the rectory, someone gave me a 9/11 plaque that says, always remember our fallen heroes. So please keep always in your prayers the military and their families, the police and fire, all those sorts of support staff. I throw in Border Patrol agents. I'm sure there's a lot of people, EMTs, that need our prayers and our thoughts, especially as we celebrate this most amazing and awesome of countries. I'll leave it at that because I gave this homily last Mass and I started verging onto a political talk and I realized I had to get out of that, okay? So you want to talk to me privately about my politics, I'd love to share it with you, but from the pulpit is not an appropriate place, as you well know. When people do ask me what my political affiliations are, I generally respond to them, I'm a member of the Revolutionary Party. And it wasn't all perfect, but Jefferson, Adams, Washington, Monroe, you know those guys, Madison. Another guy who doesn't get a lot of talk, Hamilton. Just I'll do a little civics lesson here. If George Washington is the father of the nation, and James Madison is the father of the Constitution, what does that make Hamilton? The father of government. When it's good, when it's good. He was the father of government. He put all that Federalist Papers with Madison together, and it's a great lesson. The other day after confession, an Irishman, I don't know if he was Irish or he was faking being Irish. He had a brogue. He said to me, can I tell you a quick joke? I said, go for it. I'm hearing depressions. I'm hearing confessions. I'm a little depressed. It's good. Tell me a joke. So he went into a big, thick brogue. And he said, someone asked me the other day if the Irish celebrate the 4th. To which I responded immediately, of course not. We go straight from the 3rd to the 5th. I don't touch this stuff, but that's a funny joke. This morning, just to throw this out, this morning at the health club opens today at 5:45. At 5:45, there were 4 members in the health club actually doing something. 2 of them were Monsignor and myself. How's that, okay? And on the way out, these 2 of them were having this conversation. It was very funny. I'm listening. Of course, we all do that. We all eavesdrop. Come on, who's kidding who, right? So I'm walking out, and they're talking about a party. And one woman says to the other woman, I was so surprised that he showed up. And it was just right on cue. So I walk right into the thing. Yeah, me too. I'm going to go to Mass. And I know he's going to show up. And he's going to come into my soul. And I'm going to receive him. It's going to be awesome. They know who I am. And they're like, oh, not a homily this early. I'm like, of course. I just got done swimming. I'm all ready to go. I got to practice for the crowd. This and that. Okay. The most quoted gospel verse you already know is John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave us his only Son. And we need the Son. Oh, do we need the Son? Among all things, redemption, salvation, the gift of Holy Communion, the sacraments. But as the reading said, he also reveals the Father to us. 3 persons, 1 God. We got to know about the Father. See, it's not just a nebulous, big word, nebulous, abstract, esoteric force. That's not what we believe. No. Very personal, very loving, very loving. And Jesus tells us that. The Father loves you so much. You have a Father in heaven. You'll never be orphans. And it's important to realize that. The most, according to Monsignor this morning, over breakfast, over a granola bar, he says the most quoted story in the Bible is the Good Samaritan. And we can see why, can't we? It's faith in action. That it wasn't the priest or the other people. It was a Samaritan who was a non-Jew who helped the guy out of the ditch and took care of him. The next most, I didn't know this, quoted story or sayings of Jesus is this one. Come to me, all you who labor and are burdened, and I will give you rest. Father, why is that the second most thought about scripture passage? And the answer is because we all share the cross. All of us at one time or another, or stay tuned, sorry, it's going to come, we've been burdened. We've been heartbroken. Whether it be health or wealth or someone we loved, they're no longer with us. And that's something we all have in common here. That's one thing we still come here with our losses and our sorrows, And as it says, I praise you, Father. Jesus says, I still praise you, that what you have kept from the clever and the wise, you have revealed to the merest of children. That somehow, through humility, through being like a child, trusting, dependent, open-hearted and minded, God reveals to us deeper, and not secrets, deeper communications, a deeper experience, and hopefully a deeper, fuller understanding of the journey we're walking on. Last Saturday, I celebrated Mass here, and I had mentioned it was the 20th anniversary of my own brother's death. My brother James died at 32 years of age, 20 years ago, Saturday, not yesterday, a week before that. I had mentioned after his death how my mother was so awesome, and my dad was deceased already. My mother was so awesome at the wake and the funeral. So many, it won't surprise me, my brother's funeral and his wake, so many people, I had no idea who they were. He touched so many people, and a lot of them, not all of them had faith. So my mother had to stand in there for her husband, who was not there, and console all these mostly young men. He played softball, professional softball player. And she consoled all these, and there were some girls, I'm sure old girlfriends or something. She consoled all these people. She was so faith-filled. And if they didn't have didn't have faith or had a little faith, I want to think and I want to believe she lifted them up a little bit. She gave them the hope to stay steadfast, to not get into depression, to not get into despair. And a month and a half, and I witnessed this. It was a huge influence on my life. And after this happened to my brother, and we buried him, same weekend. July 2nd, we buried him, 20 years ago. A month and a half later, I was in the seminary. That was 20 years ago. I was in the seminary. I did not let his death, it was sad, of course it's sad, it's heartbroken. I still think about it. But I didn't want that event, what happened to my leg, or whatever else happened to me, to be the ultimate definition of who I am. I didn't want that to be the ultimate definition. I wanted the ultimate definition to be a child of God, a child of a holy, loving, all-giving Father. And I pursued what I believe God told me to do, and now here we are today. We'll pick up the story. This gospel is the one that's used for the Sacred Heart image, right there, the Sacred Heart. You can all look, you're sitting right there. You can look right over there. I'm actually looking at you people now. So I'm looking at you. I usually don't look at you, and I'm looking at you. There's a Sacred Heart image back there. What do you see when you see the Sacred Heart image? You see flames bursting out of his heart. Father, what's the significance? Overflowing, super abundant, generous love. Overflowing, super abundant, generous love. That's what the Sacred Heart image reveals to us. There's also a crown of thorns around his heart. That's death. His own death, and the death which is caused by sin, and the heartbreaks that we all suffer when we lose a loved one. That's in his Sacred Heart. That's the image that this gospel gives to us. When I finished Mass on Saturday, and I walked to the back, there's a man standing there with what looks like terror in his eyes. And he takes my hand. I know who he is. And he pulls me close and he says, Father, I got the phone call yesterday. My son just passed. He was 30 years old. His name was the same as my brother's, Jim. He died last week. Last week. And I was shocked. I didn't know what to say. I told him I'd pray. We'd be in contact with him. I ran home and told Monsignor. Monsignor went to the house. Shortly thereafter, I can't imagine, shortly thereafter, the house turned into an open house. And the neighbors started coming. And people from their various associations started coming. And they played hockey in this town, for Crystal Lake hockey. Those people showed up. People from the church kind of helped. And then we had to prepare the funeral, prepare the wake and the funeral. This was awful. I'm telling you this because most of us, in some way, may not have shared as great of a loss, but we've shared losses. This was a monumental one. 6 children. He was 30. Had a girlfriend he was in love with. Imagine how she was feeling. So the long short of it is, and it's really, I'm making a long story short, the wake was profound, right across the street. 2 to 9, nonstop, packed. Kids coming out the door. Those 6 kids had other friends, and they had friends, and the parents had friends, and it was just a mob scene of well-wishers and people giving their support. At one point, the oldest son, Tom, said to me, he says, Father, I go to the funerals and wakes sometimes, and I say I'm sorry, and I mean it, and I'm there with my participation, but I don't think it means anything. But so many people told me they're sorry, and I believe them. It's starting to have an effect on me. The kid who gave the eulogy, his best friend gave the eulogy. This was very clever because the hearts were so heavy. The mom and dad are in front, just like my mom was, consoling people coming there. Their faith was so strong. First words out of Marion's mouth when Monsignor goes to the house is she embraces him and starts crying. And she says, Father, Monsignor, what would I possibly do without faith? I ask myself that question all the time. What would I do? So his best friend at the wake is given a eulogy, and he throws everybody off. Place is packed. Babies are crying. A lot of babies, which is great. Gotta have babies. It's not a party unless they're babies. So finally, the young man says, he gets up and he says, Kevin is his name. He says, you think I'm going to come here and say nice things about him? Let me tell you what I didn't like about Jim. Threw everybody off. You know what I didn't like about Jim? He was always the first pick at every sport. He was that good of a player. Always the first pick. As kids growing up in the neighborhood, we know what that's like. I wasn't always the first. I was maybe the second kid. But anyway, sure, I'm telling you that. What's the real story, right? Yeah. So the point being, it encapsulated a deep sorrow that, yes, was weighing them down. It was weighing me down. It was a heavy burden and a labor. But we came to the Lord. And the Lord somehow, some way, provided consolation and some spiritual rest. Then we had the funeral mass. This is all just happened. The funeral mass. The bishop was here on the 4th of July. The bishop was right here. Bishop left, and we had the funeral mass. After the funeral mass, the reception. There were so many people. I never seen more people at a reception for this young man. The amount of people he touched. The amount of people who expressed how good of an example he was. And he got his life back. He got back. He got his faith. He was championing the faith. There was a story of him and his girlfriend driving to his brother's firefighter graduation. You won't believe this. They pull the car over on the side of the road and get out of the car to put the radio up full blast and start dancing on the side of the road. People are driving by honking the horn. I said, what was the song? Say the last dance for me. So at the reception, there were so many people. The funeral luncheon ladies, they had to take like the bread, like Jesus took the bread and like multiply it. Because there were so many people, and I don't want to mention their names, but Oni's in charge of the whole operation. She got more. I never seen these people. There's people coming out of the woodwork, rolling out tables. There's not enough space to get film the whole thing in there, and it was just a surreal yet very real, very deathly real occasion to both mourn and remember and to celebrate. My friends, all of us at some time or other will fall in relationship to the mystery of the cross. Actually, some of the greatest saints are those who suffered the most in this life. The mystery of the cross certainly visited this family, and it's probably visited most of us in some way or another. And I just hope, as the Lord says, in these difficulties, in these doubts, in these heartbreaks, we come to the Lord. Come to Him. He's begging you, come to me, please. Don't go to the bartender. If you got to go to the shrink, you can go to the shrink. I'm okay with that. You might need a 12-step group. You might need a support system. But come to the Lord. Don't make Him third or fourth. Make Him first. Come to the Lord. You don't think the Blessed Virgin Mary knew the full brunt of a heartbreak at the foot of the cross? The beloved disciple John? Beloved disciple John at the Last Supper. We're at the Last Supper, by the way, kind of, mysteriously, sacramentally. What did John do at the Last Supper? Jesus said, one of you is going to betray me. John was confused. John was like, oh my goodness, this can't be happening. He laid his head on the heart of Jesus. That's the invitation the Lord has for us who labor and are burdened, to come to Him, to learn. And this is hard for us. We're Americans, man. We just got done celebrating independence. And Father Jerome is telling you, be more dependent. Be more dependent on God. I'd love to tell the government to be more dependent on the Constitution, but I'm not going there right now, okay? It's not my time. It's not my time. So we come to learn to depend on God more, to come to God more, to depend on God more. And hopefully, this is my story, to trust God more. To give God our trust. I can't explain why a person 30 years old dies as a victim in a tragic car crash. I can't explain it. I don't know. Your stories, I've heard some of them. I can't explain it. Father, why does my wife have cancer and her hair keeps falling out? And she's on her 5th treatment now of chemo, and now we're going to experimental treatments because no one else can help us. It's a mystery. I can't explain it. But I do know, as I suffer through these things, and as you show me, in this instance, Jim's parents and his siblings, Marion and Terry, his parents, they showed me, and his girlfriend Megan, they showed me what it's like to struggle and to cry and to have a heart broken open for others to see in public, yet to pursue God and to depend more upon Him and to trust Him in all this. And then finally, yesterday, because you can't bury someone on the 4th of July, those Union grave diggers, let me tell you, okay? Just kidding. If you're a grave digger, I apologize, okay? You got a tough job. But they won't bury you on the 4th of July, so we did that yesterday. We went yesterday to the grave. Just the immediate family. And all these kids. One of the kids got triplets. And all the kids running around. And they had a beautiful little ceremony. Took lilies and roses and put them in the ground with his remains. And we put our hands in. Like you know, because that's what athletes do, you know, before the big game, you put your hands in. 1, 2, 3, Jimbo! And I want to conclude with what the patriarch said. What his father said at the end. His father said at the end of the entire service, at the graveside, he says, listen, and just immediate family and their spouses and girlfriends and boyfriends. And he says, look, if you want to, and I say this about my brother, okay, so we're totally simpatico on this. If you want to honor my brother, here's what Terry said, if you want to honor my son, I want you to believe there's a heaven. I want you to believe that Jim's in it. And I want you to believe that in the midst of all this, God still loves us. I want you to believe that. If you lost a loved one, if somebody broke your heart by not being here, or something else happened to you, something horrible, something you haven't even told anybody else, I can't explain to you the fullness of the mystery of the cross. I don't know. I don't have an answer for you. As much as I do not know, I do know this, and this Mass is part of it. When it comes to the mystery of the cross, whatever I don't know, I do know it leads to life everlasting. For the O'Hagan family, and for all those who mourn the loss of a loved one, my sincerest and deepest sympathy.